Are you preparing orchestra excerpts for a college or youth orchestra placement audition, a summer festival, or repertoire class? Playing an excerpt from a full orchestral piece in a solo setting isn't exactly the most natural thing that we do as musicians, and the pressure and nerves of an audition can compound these difficulties. However, there are strategies and techniques that you can use to build your skills and confidence in the weeks and days ahead of your audition. In this video, I'll be sharing my personal approach to preparing, practicing, and performing orchestra excerpts. Especially if you're not familiar with the piece, but even if you are, I recommend that you look over your part first to see what it's like. Look for things like the composer, the time period, what piece and specific movement the excerpt is in, as well as things like tempo markings, general dynamic contour, whether you need any special additional mutes or other instrument equipment, and anything else that stands out to you initially. Listen to the music in its full orchestral setting. It's a great idea to listen to the whole piece, but if you're pressed for time or you already know this piece very well, you can just listen to the complete movement the excerpt is a part of. I like to listen to the recording at least 3 times, listening for specific things each time. For the first time through the recording, follow along with the full orchestral score. Some videos on YouTube have a synced full score in line with the recording, but you can also get a full score usually on IMSLP or through your library. Most of the time, your excerpt will fall into one of 3 category roles. Number 1 is a main melody. This is my favorite. It could also be an interesting texture or accompaniment. Or lastly, it could be a tricky spot that is obscure in the music. This is definitely my least favorite one. Whatever the case is, pay attention to what's going on in the rest of the orchestra, especially on instruments that play the same thing as your part or interact closely. You can write in cues on your printed out part, such as if you're playing a melody with the oboe, for example, you could write W/OB for with oboe to give you a heads up as you're practicing and performing the excerpt. The second time you listen through the recording, follow again with the full orchestral score. Actively deepen your awareness of how your part fits in with the rest of the orchestra. Also note any striking harmony changes, especially if your part is holding a relatively longer note over that harmony change. This way you can know when to change your sound color. The third time you listen to the recording, follow along with your printed out notated part that we've been referencing earlier. You can add any notations or cues that will be helpful for you to be able to recreate the full orchestral atmosphere in your mind as you play the excerpt solo. While you're practicing, be very meticulous about every indication and marking in your part. This may seem obvious, but it's very key, so I did want to mention it. Compare several good recordings to figure out the average tempo, and then use your metronome to ensure that you can play it precisely in time. Even if it has a rubato section, you'll want to play it exactly in time before you start moving the tempo around. Do be musically expressive, but don't put a strong personal interpretation on the excerpt. Save that for your solo piece. Each conductor will put their own mark on the piece, but they'll all start from the indications in the score. A quick note for string players. Sometimes the provided part will contain bowings, but if it doesn't, and it's not obvious from the score what they should be, you can watch video performances of the piece to get ideas. For help with specific excerpts, consult your teacher or search for videos by orchestral musicians that break down the tips for specific excerpts. While I'm playing the excerpt, I find it really helpful to imagine that I'm in the midst of the orchestra. You can use subtle body language cues to connect with the instrument or instruments that you're playing directly with, like you would in a normal orchestra setting. Don't stare the whole time at either your instrument or your sheet music. Obviously, I'm not recommending that you look directly at your panel, much as you don't do that for an audience when you're playing in a recital. But choose a couple of neutral spaces around you in the room. If you can look somewhere else while successfully playing your excerpt, this will help you be that much more confident when you get audition nerves or when you're actually playing an orchestra and you need to look at the conductor frequently. Most importantly, remember the fundamentals: a steady pulse, precise rhythm, and good intonation. If you've got these, you'll do well at your audition. If you found this video helpful, consider sharing it with a friend, and click subscribe to be notified of the next video coming out next week. In the meantime, you can check out the other videos on my channel, all designed to help you discover and develop your unique potential as a classical musician. Thanks so much for watching. I love you all, and I'll see you soon.